This is Lasse Forsberg's tank, and I decided to make a video about it because it's the most natural looking reef tank I've ever seen, while disregarding most aquascaping guidelines, which I normally acknowledge. The footage you will see here was shot by Lasse himself. Lasse's tank is an oddity in many ways, and I suggest you check out this thread on Reef to Reef in this video channel. I will leave the links in the description. But on this video I will focus mostly on the aquascape. The first thing you should notice is that this is first of all a fish tank. The fish tank is odd but cohesive. I wouldn't find it strange to see this fish in a small cove during a dive. The tank has a back to nature background, something you normally only see in freshwater tanks, especially cichlid tanks. I don't think you can actually notice it now because the corals have covered most of it. In fact, this tank reminds me a lot of nature aquariums, not only because of the predominance of green, but also because visually it uses 100% of the aquarium, left to right and top to bottom. I can almost see the tree canopies on top and smaller bushes at the bottom. The color palette is very limited, predominantly green and skin tones. Almost all fish blend into this environment, with the exception of the yellow wrasses. It's the saturation of the yellow that makes them pop, and not the color of position, because the yellow is a neighbor of both the green and skin tones. On the other hand, this tank is the opposite example of common aquascaping guidelines. There's no focal point or enhanced sense of depth. In fact, there's almost a claustrophobic feeling, and the tank looks much smaller than it really is, at least on video. And even taking note of all this is one of the most uniquely beautiful tanks I've ever seen. The way the animals move and behave in the wild is always very different from what we can see in captivity, and that's also something that caught my attention in this tank. Once again, I feel like I'm watching something that was shot in a small sheltered corner of a lagoon. Part of this derives from the fish selection and the other from the aquascape. One of Lasse's goals was, in his own words, to have such an interesting system that he feels like he sees something new every day. Another feature of this tank are the clams, and they help to create a natural sense of proportion by dwarfing the fish, which are all on the small side to start with. I believe the lighting of this tank is also unique. It's not blue, it's not white, it's something that makes the subdued color palette become vibrant. I am unsure about this, but I think it may have to do with how the white light is created, not with white LEDs, but by mixing all the colors instead. To conclude, after giving some thought about why this is one of the most beautiful reef tanks I've ever seen, while not following most of the traditional aquascaping guidelines, I believe the main reasons are how successfully it recreates a secluded cove where this strange but cohesive fish group lives, the right proportion between the size of the fish and the corals and the clams, and the reduced and harmonious color palette comprised by just 3 neighboring colors. Does this mean that it's not worth learning common aquascaping techniques? No. It means that if you don't follow them, you should have a good reason not to.